And we're back with another episode of the Rookieville Pod with your hosts, Joe Joe and Cbomb. Another night, another day to talk about rookies. We are brought to you by the Ballsville Podcast, where we combine fantasy football and poker, which creates big payouts with great odds. Connor, we were talking about the wide receiver logjam pre-show. These are the three wide receivers that are often in that late first round, early second round. A lot of questions out there in the fantasy space, especially in Ballsville too, of like where these receivers, what order should they have gone in, right? So what do you say to that before we hop in right into it?
Yeah, I'm excited about a couple of these guys, pre-draft, you might have been, reaching on these guys maybe mid first round or so, or even getting a couple of these guys late second round. So we'll see what that is. I like talking about a couple of these guys, like I said, so we'll just get right into it.
Sneak peek, and because he's going to be up towards the end of this show is your boy Luther Burden. But first things first, we got to talk about my guy because he's Ohio State, Emeka Egbuka. So right now we have the prospect profile here. I'm going to go into some strengths and weaknesses, and you'll hit us with some stats and measurables, and we're going to go with an outlook from there. But I also have a little name game this time around for these guys too. So first things first with Emeka Egbuka, I want to say the ball skills and reliable hands are big as his catching traits. He's not going to really blow you away with the yak ability. I think that's part of his main weakness, if you will, against routes and separation. I think he's going to mesh well with the supporting cast that he's got there. I know there is a logjam in and of itself in Tampa Bay. It probably shocked a lot of people that he went there. There's a lot of slot archetypes there. Godwin, he himself, Egbuka, and Jalen McMillan. So we'll see which one could really emerge. Does Godwin's injury linger? But I think, again, he's going to mesh well overall. Maybe not in year one. We'll see if the injury to Godwin kind of gives him that opportunity early on. But what I mean by meshing well is not just the culture. I mean, he is a great culture fit. He was a captain at Ohio State. But with the routes that he did run and the system that he was designed in Ohio State, he played with an alpha, even a freshman, Jeremiah Smith. And the mesh routes that he ran over there, the drags, the rubs, the sail routes, the sail concepts, and also even the deep crossers when Jeremiah Smith would go deep over the field. I think those kind of situations, I think it's Josh Grizzard is the new OC in Tampa Bay, where he can create those same kind of concepts. You're going to see a lot of plus matchups, plus EV production. So that's my little riff on Emeka Egbuka. What say you?
Yeah, so you called this something when we started this podcast. You called this the logjam at wide receiver, and that's what Emeka Egbuka has been in like basically his whole career.
1,000%.
Yeah, so he went to Ohio State. He had Olave and Wilson and Harrison and all these studs. Jeremiah Smith came in as a freshman and really took the nation by storm. And then Egbuka's just there producing year after year, basically, even with some of these top guys. And then he goes to Tampa Bay, where they already have Mike Evans, they already have Godwin, they already have McMillan, who produced last year for them. So, I mean, that's just something to worry about with him is like you said, strength and weaknesses. That little landing spot might hurt him a little bit, but dynasty-wise, all these guys are a little bit older. McMillan wasn't that great of a player profile coming out. So, and like you said, he's not the most agile guy out there, but he's really, really smooth, really fluid with his cuts. Not that fast. He ran a decent 40 time around 4.4 something, 4.48, I think, 4.45 in that range. But yeah, he's not the fastest guy. He's not like Matt Golden, who we'll touch on here in a few minutes. But yeah, he has a lot of decent characteristics, rather great characteristics. Hopefully he can produce on the field with like I said, with the logjam out receiver that Tampa Bay has.
And I think one of the things that will probably give him some more opportunity, even if Godwin is healthy, is that he's a great run blocker. I mean, he was asked to run block a lot in the Ohio State scheme. Of course, Chip Kelly is known for running the football. So he was on the field a lot, and he was always asked to block, and he did really well with that. So I think that in and of itself, even if everyone's fully healthy in that room, he should be able to see the field. But again, the fantasy ceiling is so is unpredictable at this moment. So here we go. We got some stats here. You can see he went over 1,000 yards 2 times, but go ahead. I'll let you go here.
Yeah, so as you can see, like he produced, even with like some of these guys were saying, like as a sophomore, he went over basically almost 75 catches, which in college is basically a 100 catch season because they play less games, but 1,200 yards, which is great. And they still had, I think Harrison was there for sure. I don't remember who else was there, but they still had studs on top of studs that were, producing there.
Garrett Wilson was there
Yeah.
early in when he was a freshman.
Yeah.
He was also a 5-star recruit too. Like he was a top 10 nationally ranked. So, I mean, he was definitely highly touted. And I mean, he still, like you said, produced, and he emerged even with a crowded wide receiver room all 4 years at Ohio State. Obviously, he won a natty, as you can see there by the little trophy there. The other thing I wanted to just touch on real quick is that his comps. Chris Godwin, his teammate, pretty similar size, around 6 feet, a little over 200 pounds. They're both not blazers as far as speed wise. I think a safe floor is kind of like a Khalil Shakir. He's also around that 6 foot range. I think he's just south of 200, about like 198. But I think when it comes to that floor that we're speaking of, he's like a safe guy. Khalil Shakir is probably a pretty decent comp there. And then if you want to make more upside, a former Ohio State guy, JSN. So I think those are all great comps for him, and maybe that give you that outlook of what his career could possibly look like, and maybe even fantasy production. Okay. Now, before we move on to the next player, I want to play a quick name game. So I'm going to rattle off some names, and I want you to tell me who would you rather have in a dynasty startup with these names, and if you would take Emeka Egbuka over. So it'd be like a yes or no, right? So first name, Davante Adams.
Egbuka.
Okay. Jerry Jeudy.
Egbuka probably still.
Okay. Ricky Pearsall.
Egbuka.
Okay.
Both in law jams, I think, but yeah.
Okay. Terry McLaurin, another vet.
He's reaching age 30. Egbuka.
Okay. I'll give you another younger-ish receiver. Jaden Reed. That's close, right?
Yeah, I like Jaden Reed. But I'm ready to see. I want to see what Golden does. I'll take Egbuka there too.
Okay. And the last one, I'm going to go with Brandon Ayuk. Last one here. I know there's an injury right now, but
I'll take Ayuk still there. Okay. I think that's the only one.
All right. Well, I hope that helps also helps out others who are going to be in maybe some future dynasty startups, maybe towards the end of the summer. So I want to give you that as well. So any further notes before we go on to the next one?
Nope. And that's like you said, that's dynasty startup. That's not this year type thing. Most of those guys were older. McLaurin's 30 or 29, and then Davante Adams. I still think both of those guys are going to have tremendous years. Just dynasty value wise, they're probably tearing off.
Gotcha. All right, next one we got Matthew Golden. All right, he was also drafted in the first round. Late first round here. I think it was 2002 or 2012? Was it 2002?
Before Aaron Rodgers got there, that's for sure.
Gosh, dang. So yeah, Matthew Golden was the first round wide receiver, our first drafted round. I guess the first round wide receiver since 2002 for Green Bay. God, I can't get that out of my mouth. But Blazer speed. I know you're going to touch on the 40 time, which we all know at this point. But I want to say with Matthew Golden, when it comes to mind, is intermediate and deep. Obviously, he was drafted to be the vertical threat now in Green Bay. The Christian Watson injury, I think, prompted this decision. Also, not just the injury. I think it's just the overall production. They haven't had someone that they can call their true X or true deep threat that can really stretch the field and get their intermediate game and short game going. So with Matthew Golden, I think the yards per catch, yards after catch, and yards per game. I think that what he had in Texas can translate to some degree. I think his route running ability is also pretty elite or above average in this class. I love the crisp route running at the top of his routes, comebacks on hitches, very clean, plucks the ball out of the air, has a good ability to kind of create that separation as well. That being said, it's still an inconsistent production profile because most of this production came at the latter part of his career. And Houston, when he was at Houston, there was some injuries, but it was almost a completely different player. If you were to watch the tape and got some highlights from his Houston days, his ball tracking ability and just the inconsistency with his focus, he would just drop balls. It was very concerning. But he turned heads, college football playoff surge, really put him on the map, and then rose draft boards from there. So what say you about Matthew Golden?
Yeah, so like you said, I'll touch on his 40 time. He had blazing speed. I think sub sub 4.3, I think 4.29, 4.28, something like that. He ran. So I think he was one of, if not the fastest player at the combine this year. Like you said, his production in college, we'll go to that a little bit. He really struggled in Houston quite a bit, under 500 yards a year. He only played 9 games, only played 11 games his first year, and sub 600 yards. And
yeah, those injuries definitely hurt those productions too. But still, that's part of the game too. Some of your greatest ability is your availability, right? We always hear that.
Yeah, and then like you said, he broke out this past year, but still sub 1,000 yards. They had quite a few receivers that viewers like to throw there. Bond was who everybody thought was going to be their main guy coming from Alabama, but really never broke out. And then Golden broke out in the playoffs, like you said. Blazing fast. He worries me in the Green Bay team. I just think they have so many players like him, like you said, Reed earlier. Watson, they have Dobbs, they have Wicks, all basically very similar players over there. None of those guys really are like alphas to me. Golden, he kind of worries me with the, John Ross type player. I think he's a little bit bigger, but he still has a small frame. I think 5'11". I think we touched on it a little bit on his player profile, but 5'11", 190 pounds, which isn't your stereotypical outside receiver. And then like I said, Wicks and Dobbs and all those other guys also like to play inside. So we'll see what he can do, but they spend the draft capital on him. So I like taking him at the end of the first sometimes. If he falls into the second, he's a great pick.
Yeah, over his final 10 games, actually, there was a yards per out run metric on him over 2.5 yards, which is uncanny, which is great. Again, that's a small sample size, though, because it was just for his late surge. Because, like you mentioned, they had all the receivers at Texas where kind of I think either Sarkisian and Ewers were trying to get Isaiah Bond going, and it really didn't really jive really well. But he emerged on his own. Again, a lot of these receivers do that have that talent and have that maybe transcendent ability. They just kind of create their own opportunity. So my direct question to you is he transcendent or can he be transcendent?
I think he could be. I think Green Bay thinks he can be as well. That's why they spent the first round draft capital on him. I personally would have went with a different receiver here. I'm not a Texas fan, so horns down all the way, but I like Burden. Is who we'll get to next, but I think they should have. I think he had a more established production profile, a little bit better as a product, all that included. I do think Golden can, but I'm a little worried that he will.
And we have to bring this up though too, man, because we have to let the people know, if they don't know already, is that the jersey number he chose, which is number
22.
God, it's going to be ugly.
Yeah.
I mean, I with all due respect, Matthew Golden, if you happen to come across the Rookieville pod by Boswell, I know that you're honoring your grandma. So with that, I mean, there's a tender little affection there. But at the same time, man, I just get Dexter McCluster vibes, dude. I just hope that's not the future for you. The last thing is you touched a little bit about the same archetypes. I do want to still just touch on the 80% snaps that he played in college. Were out wide, 20% in the slot. So there's some variability there. Versatility there. And then my last question to you before we move on to the next person is, do you think he's more Mecole Hardman? I think you mentioned even John Ross. Is he more of those types, or can he be more JMO? Because I mean, he's that vertical threat, and that kind of can maybe win weeks even. So let's break this up. Is he more Mecole, John Ross versus JMO in year one?
Year one, I mean, I think he's going to tell the tale, right? I think year one for him is make or break.
Okay.
Because of what they have at wide receiver.
Give me a flag plan, dude. Come on.
I think personally, I think he's probably more Mecole Hardman.
Okay. All right. What about year? So I mean, are you saying that for his?
I think that's his dynasty career. I think
that's dynasty career. Okay, I got you. Okay, that's fair enough. I was going to say maybe if that changed over the course of time, but maybe not. Okay. Let's move it on to actually, you know what? I might even let you intro this one. I'm gonna let you riff off your boy. We're gonna talk about Luther Burden here. Go ahead. Just take the floor, man. I'll riff off you here. Go ahead.
Yeah. So for sure. So, Luther Burden was a great player, like all throughout, his Missouri days. He really fell off towards the end of this, the end of the year for Missouri. They were really hyping him up. he was going to be one of my favorite players to draft coming into 2025. I was trying to get a bunch of early ones thinking I was going to take him, 104, 105. But he slipped a little bit. He didn't. We'll go to his stats right quick.
Yeah. Because to be honest, like after that 2023 year, like he was the number one wide receiver in this class prospect wise.
Exactly.
100%.
Yeah. So after coming off of 86 catches and 1,212 yards, basically almost 10 touchdowns. Everybody was expecting them just to, keep going. Missouri was looking good, especially late last year. They had a great year in 2023 compared to what they had been previously. And then Missouri just, kind of fell apart this year in the SEC, which, I mean, it's a tough conference. You got Texas in there and Oklahoma in there now that I think they had to play both of them actually. But yeah, so his production, dropped off, under 70 catches, under 700 yards, but he's still, one of my favorite players to draft. He fell into the second round to the Bears, which kind of sucks as well. Not the greatest landing spot for him. A guy we talked about, Loveland, on the previous pod about being in there with all those guys that can catch the ball. DJ Moore, Roma Dunze, you got Loveland there, you got Swift there, and what Caleb Williams could do. So I'm a little bit worried about that as well. So I think where he's going, early second round, I still think that's probably a great pick just because of his prospect grade, his production profile, especially his junior year there, his size. He's a little bit bigger than Golden. He's not quite as fast, but he's a little bit faster than Egbuka, 4.42, I believe, right around there. And then I think a couple of things that they said, that coming into the draft was like small hands, and he really didn't engage much. Like you're saying, Egbuka's a real dog, real team guy, captain. They basically said a lot of character ish, not a lot. He's not like an off the field guy, but he's just nostalgic, kind of like a DJ Moore esque player that that doesn't seem to live football like a lot of people want their players to do.
I hear you. Yeah, definitely the character concerns. I think there was actually a lot of reports from beat writers, especially that were close to Chicago, or just and a lot of the teams that were kind of rumored to take him, maybe even like Dallas too, where his interviews were just terrible. I don't know if that's just him as a person. Maybe he's just not a good communicator or whatever it is. But so in that regard, maybe that dissuaded some teams to him, maybe even taking him in the first round. Because I mean, I'm sure he was told by a lot of people that he was going to be a first round pick.
I mean, I think if he came out last year, he would have been, right? If he was able to come out.
I don't think you can't come out as a –
if he was able to come out, he would have. I think after 2023, he probably would have been a first-round draft pick.
I think hands down, yes.
Yep.
I want to touch on some other kind of, I guess, little nuanced stuff that would probably be credited as strengths. I mean, the position he landed in Chicago, because of the new coaching regime, Ben Johnson brought over a lot of position coaches. One being Antoine Randall, who I would say would probably be primarily credited for that receiving room. Amon-Ra St. Brown, and then more importantly, I think it was really the turnaround from J-Mo, because he had a difficult start to his career with the injuries, the suspensions, but he kept him focused. Like there was a lot of in behind the scenes stuff with that. So I think for a guy like J-Mo, and again, I think I touched on this on the other pod when we did our rankings, was, they're both from St. Louis. They're both Missouri boys. So maybe there's some connection to where Antoine Randall can maybe peel back the onion a little bit and really get the most out of this guy, who kind of has that same demeanor, like you were just pointing out. So I want to bring that up. And if you kind of believe in that narrative and you like stories like that, and you maybe just want to root for that, I think that's more of a reason why you can take him and get that little conviction, like I always talk about. But the biggest selling point for Luther Burden is his yak ability, right? But at the same time, it's a double-edged sword for me, because we get these yak gods or yak kings from every single class. Last year, it was all about Malachi Corley, right? Before that, it was Debo. There's really only one Debo, and even then, Debo hasn't really touched that transcendent season he had a couple years ago. He hasn't even come close to it. So, so for me, it's a red flag, because it's how much of that is truly translatable. Okay, so here are the receptions here: 192. 75% of those receptions came from under 10 yards. So if you're going to have a low ADOT, do you think that he can really scored 20 plus times in a 3-year span. I mean, I don't know. In the NFL, it's a different game. So, I mean, he did play in the SEC. So maybe there's some translatability with that too. So I just want to put that out there. That's why I'm a little at pause, but I'm also scared at the same time. The effort is another thing I touched on in the last pod too. I want to just kind of let's put a bow on this one because we know this kid's talented. We know I think he has that transcendent ability, and there's no question. So the comps, DJ Moore, like his teammate, Jarvis Landry, I think is another good comp with that slot-esque plucks balls out of the air as well. And then obviously Debo Light, like I pointed out here. I'm going to do another right name game with you as well. I'm going to pro up DJ Moore. Who would you rather have?
DJ Moore.
Okay.
Just guaranteed, time on the field. And still not 20. I think he's 27, so.
Yeah, and then I'm also going to go with Jerry Jeudy on this one too. Where would you think on this?
I'd probably still take Burden, but very slightly. Very, very slightly.
Since you did want to take Brandon Ayuk still over Egbuka, how about Brandon Ayuk?
Yeah, Ayuk still.
Burden? Okay, so okay, got you. All right. What about DK Metcalf in the new spot?
Probably slightly Metcalf just because of guaranteed production there, for the next couple of years. One name that you did mention, I think, Egbuka was Terry McLaurin.
Okay.
That's on that tier. I would probably still take Terry McLaurin just because it's guaranteed production over Burden.
Okay.
Very slightly, like I said, just because of guaranteed production for the next year or two with Daniels there. So,
yeah, I think this for Luther Burden, I think you would agree with this too, since we think pretty similarly here, is for a dynasty squad that has the ability to kind of shoulder this risk, or perhaps maybe if you're just a risk tolerant player, like you can actually, you don't mind it. Like, I'm just going to shoot for upside and that's all I care about because he's young. I mean, I still think he's built for those rosters who are just kind of built for that and have that structure. But what say you?
I totally agree. Him and Egbuka, I think, are great dynasty pieces to have if you're a rebuilding team that really doesn't need much production year one. You're not expecting him to go score 10 points a game year one. Golden is a little bit different for me between the three guys. I think Golden, his dynasty value will teeter on year one, what he does year one, and it should. I think, if he does and, has 1,000-yard season, that's going to be his career. He's going to be a dog. He's going to play. But if if he's 500 yards, 40 catches, that's probably going to be his career. But the complete opposite for me, Bird and Egbuka, I think they're probably going to have 500-yard seasons, probably 40 catches, 50 catches or so, right around there. A couple touchdowns maybe here or there. But they're not going to be their number one receiver and probably not even their number two receiver in either of these offenses. But their production value moving on forward will just increasingly grow. So if Burden can get on the field this year, he'll definitely get on the field next year. DJ Moore's probably gone after next year. I think he only has 2 more years on his contract.
He at least has 2 more for sure.
Yeah.
At least.
So if he's there, and then we'll see what Caleb Williams can do, his production and value, and Egbuka a little bit better situation just because both of those receivers in front of him are much older than DJ Moore and Rome Odunze.
Yeah, the Chicago just growing with a young core. So I mean that's the highlight there too.
And one more thing, the draft capital was a little bit different. So like the percentages go down just a tad between round 1 and round 2. Draft capital. So
got you. I think that's that'll do it, right, for this pod.
Yeah, did you want to mention some sleepers like we did for the tight ends?
Want to do that on this episode? You want to give them some bonus stuff?
Yeah, just a couple names. You don't have to go into detail.
All right, so let me I'll pick one here. Let's see. You know what? I'm just gonna go with I think he's primarily a favorite, but I mean I can't stop drafting him. If we were to like do an episode of like who's the guys Joey keeps drafting and just can't stop drafting, it's Pat Bryant. And okay. I primarily just keep clicking his name because again, after round 20 in these, like, especially in best ball, like right now, obviously for rookie drafts, it was like a free square in late round 3 or front round 4. If he slipped to round 4, I just couldn't stop doing it. Like he has Mike Thomas traits. He only really has to beat out Troy Franklin. Like really, Troy Franklin? Okay. he sees the field. I think he's better than people think when it comes to his ability to catch on the outside. I think those 50-50 balls, he does a very, very good job seeing from at least on the tape. I hope that translates to the NFL. And he's a true X receiver as far as 80% out wide and 13.3 ADOT. So anyway, go ahead.
I got one more. I got Jalen Royals. He was my favorite player to draft pre-draft in best balls. My mini leads are like filled with Jalen Royals because he was going pretty late there. And I thought personally he's a first round talent. I thought for sure he was going in the first round, early second round, but he fell third or fourth round. But he still had tons of talent. He went to a great spot. Rice probably is not starting the year there. Hollywood Brown, never know. He's going to play the slot. Kelsey's on the end. We'll see if he can play. He might be another
Sky Moore,
or what's the other one that everybody loved just drafting the crap out of? And he never got on the field. I can't think of his name. I'm brain farting right now.
Oh, Equal, right?
No, it was he went to Clemson.
Justin Ross.
Justin Ross, yes.
Justin Ross.
Yeah. I wanted to say John Ross, but yeah, Justin Ross. Everybody loved drafting him because of all the preseason hype videos. But yeah, I hope he's not another one of those. I like Jalen Royals. That's my sleeper.
Man, I've been chasing a lot of KC wide receivers in past, rookie drafts and things of that nature. It hasn't worked out for me. So I think maybe this one, since I'm off of it, maybe it hits for you because every time I chase it, I just don't hit. So
yeah, you never know. It's bound to happen at some point. So
it's got to. I mean, well, they kind of hit on Rashee Rice. So all right. That being said, everyone, Ballsville gamers, I appreciate you checking out another episode of the pod. Please subscribe. Please leave comments. We love reading them. I try to respond to every single one of them. I'm sure Connor does too. And with that, that's a wrap.
That's a wrap.